who comes first in marriage?
Welcome to the MorrowMarriage podcast. I'm so excited. It's the 100th episode. I want to talk to you today about something that I do with my men in the program. See, most programs, they encourage you not to talk to your partner about them.
I'm Cass.
And I'm Kathryn. So I should say thank you because he goes to work every day. And I said, yeah, you don't have to say thanks every day, but you could throw in like, you're so thankful that he brings home a paycheck. You're so thankful that you can get whatever you're getting for the kids for Christmas.
He is just a paycheck. What about his needs?
Guys, we are here today. We want to talk about not loving, or I'll say don't love your inner child.
We're MorrowMarriage.
Let's flip divorce statistics with the new marriage.
Welcome to the MorrowMarriage podcast, guys. Today, I want to talk about who comes first in marriage.
Well, she does.
Wow. Well, she does, doesn't she?
There was even a book written about it.
Actually, it's true. Disrupting Divorce, the New Man, September 16th. This episode might even air around that time, guys. But listen, I wanted to break this down a little bit differently. This was actually a question. Please remember, you can submit your questions. You can let us discuss this together instead of just hearing my content come out on social media. Kathryn and I will go through it. Who comes first in marriage? Well, man and wife come first in marriage. The question was actually pertaining to, when you have family, when you have kids. All right. And most people, for starters, they obviously think about kids coming first, right?
Especially women.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that. And the other big one that I get is a man that I just talked to on one of the calls. Sorry, our dog's in here with us, and poor guy's got a cone on his head.
So you hear him banging into everything because he's not familiar with his new dimensions yet.
Yes. And by the way, along the line, apologies. We haven't got this place echo free yet. This is just a new studio for filming, and we're still working it out. So apologies. All right. So I had a call with a man the other day too, and he's a peacemaker, like a lot of men are. They try to fix and solve the problem, and
until they lose their mind.
Now,
common.
This is actually a little bit different, though. What was going on was his wife did not want to spend time with her own family, and he thinks it's very, very important. And my direct coaching response to him was, "Who comes first in the marriage? Your wife." And we discussed a few reasons why she might not be interested in seeing her family, but there's no point to make an assumption. But it goes back to always, guys, husband and wife come first. Okay. So let's talk about this kids one. Break it down for us. Why do women quite often think the kids should come first?
Well, I call it the unexpected love triangle. Some of you have probably heard me talk about it before. When you have children, I say it's like you've given birth to the love of your life, which is why it creates this love triangle, because you love your husband, ideally. If you're watching our podcast, it's possible that you're questioning that, but you love your husband, and then you have babies and you love your babies, and it causes this triangle. Because you love your husband loves your babies, you love your babies, and more often than not, you as a woman, you love your babies more, or at least differently than your husband does. I know some men would argue that, but it's just different. You grow them in your body, you develop a bond very early, and then when you have them, you are in love with them. You don't just love them. I said it was about, I had a C-section, and so it's different when you have a C-section than when you actually give birth. The hormones are a little bit messed up, but about 24 to 48 hours after I had the girls, it was like I was slapped in the face with love. Mm-hmm. I can't even explain. Someone actually explained it to me that way. And that's what it feels like. You're so madly in love with these little creatures. So I say creatures because they really are, aren't they?
They are.
Especially the older they get. So as you are falling in love with these babies, you do still love your husband, but you forget to show love to your husband because you are consumed with keeping your new baby, or babies in the case of twins or multiples, alive. Mm-hmm. And you also, the babies cause a different hormonal reaction. So with your husband, there are sex hormones that, get bubbled up, and you have that sort of attraction. When you have a baby, you have these like calming, bonding hormones that are natural, and it causes you to have this bond with your babies. And so you think it is your responsibility to raise and keep these babies alive. And some women justify it. Well, the kids have to come first because they're vulnerable, or, the kids come first. And this was one of my excuses. I always tried to keep them even, but he was a real dickhead back then.
A prick.
Yes, he was. And so I had a really hard time putting him first, even though I knew that I wanted to. And so I forget where I was going with that, because I laughed at you calling yourself a prick.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not you have to understand, it's not that men.
Oh, I remember.
Oh, please.
So sometimes women have to be intentional. You still love your husband, but you forget to show your husband. And so your husband it takes away the triangle. You know, when I said you, your babies, and your husband, and you're all connected, your husband all of a sudden feels so left out because you are consumed with taking care of your babies. You forget that your husband still needs love. Your husband, if you're used to making dinners and whatever you do as a wife, if you stop that, which is normal, by the way, when you have babies, you probably aren't going to make dinner for a little while. You're busy. But you still need to somehow show your husband that you love him in a different way.
I love how you went with intentional, because I was just going to say, it's not that men don't feel the same way. Most men, though, it takes a certain period of time. Actually, in working with thousands of men, there's a lot of us that agree. It's about the 1 year mark of your first child before it, like, you click and you go, I'm a dad. I'm not saying you didn't know you were a dad. I'm just saying it doesn't happen the same way for a man, where there is this like click.
Well, and it also, at the 1 year mark, is oftentimes when the woman stops breastfeeding, the baby becomes a little bit less dependent on the woman, and the father gets to step in a little bit more because the baby is just naturally not really going away from the mother. But there is a transitional period at the 12-month mark, often.
Agreed. Now, here's the thing, guys. No matter what we're talking about, you know, you could be talking about work, you could be talking about other friends, family members that you feel obligated to because they're your blood. You know, my adoptive father used to throw at me, blood is thicker than water, all the time. Ironically, he adopted me, and he's the real douche. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's another level of, like, you feel a sense of obligation to, like, well, I don't want to let my mom down. Or this man that's in my program where he's like, well, you know, I want to make sure that I keep their relationship connected. But you don't realize when you're choosing work, other relationships, hobbies, your children, you're disconnecting from your partner, right? And it can be challenging. You know, we're building a very big, successful business rapidly. We have to be intentional, once again, to focus on our date day. You know, we always say we sell family, right? So we're throwing that line out now as more of a core value almost for the business.
We are what we sell, is what we say.
That's right. Because if we don't prioritize us first, there's always going to be the next person like you to serve. And if we don't do our job first, we're not what we sell, well, then we're letting you down. Okay. And here, like, actually, Bill, our CEO, was just talking on COO. Sorry.
I am the CEO.
Sorry,
everyone.
my bad. Our COO, Bill, was just talking to me on the phone a moment ago, and he was saying, you know, he was talking exactly about this, and he was saying a really good example: crisis. Whenever there's a crisis, and this really will tie into this episode nicely. Okay, you have something going on between you and your partner, and so you have this crisis you need resolved immediately. And what we've learned with our business is almost nothing is actually real, true crisis that you have time. You don't have to respond, you know, to get supernatural help and help from the MorrowMarriage program or from another man or a coach. Like, you just need to stop and think about the tools you're learning and the priority that you have between you and your partner.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
So what he's describing is when you think you have a crisis, there's a sense of urgency when it is not urgent. You know, you think about what an emergency is. Well, you would call that emergent. Is it emergent? Is it urgent? And if it isn't, like he's saying, open up your toolbox, use the tools that you have, but intentionally connect with your partner, because otherwise it might be a perceived crisis. It's about to be a crisis real soon. If anybody's been in crisis in marriage, that is one of the most difficult crises to deal with.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, if you don't understand what she just said, the connect with your partner, you end up latching on to things that are going to destroy you and create and breed disconnect. So by the time you get to the crisis, the reason why, you know, unless it's like actual physical violence, I dare say almost none of it is actually true crisis. Okay. Because everything led up to that, to this point. So you got served divorce papers. Oh my gosh, I need to speak with Cass right now. And
right this second.
And you start sending me messages at inappropriate times. Well, listen, your divorce papers, you were married long after, you were living together, sleeping together, like all of these things.
The papers are not the emergency. The situation leading up to the papers is the emergency, and it should have already been dealt with. So when you get to the point of, oh my goodness, you think you're at the point of no return, stop and think. How can I, even if it's not a case of how can I connect with my partner right now, if you're using this example, Connecting with your partner is probably not going to happen the moment that she or he serves you divorce papers.
Mhm.
But how can you prevent more disconnect? No, you don't need to call Cass and Kathryn at 3:00 in the morning, although we won't answer anyway at that time.
That's true.
But stop, relax. Remember that you do need to focus on your partner. You do need to focus on your family. That is what is going to be first.
Let me finish up with one really powerful thing. So if you think about what I said, and Kathryn reiterated, use the tools that you've been given. So if we know we need to respond, not react, okay, think of any emergency you possibly can. So you're driving down the road and there's a car flipped in the ditch. You call 911. You get some blankets and some water. You get the crowd back right now. You're responding. Or you could be, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do?
That's
like,
reacting.
That's reacting. Okay. And that is what you're doing when you're like, oh my gosh, I need my help, right? My mentors right now. No, if you want to be dependent on your mentors or your tools from the program that you have to go watch over and over again instead of actually embodying them, you're going to be dependent unless you start to use them. It's like anything else. If you don't practice, you don't get good. That's why we do role playing on our calls. That's why, in the map, we're actually creating a brand new map now for a client journey. So you can understand, the winning marriage over here, this is where you are starting, and then all the steps in between. And we'll break each of these steps down. So it's very visual. Why? Because you need to know, you got to go to this call to learn this. You got to go to this part of the program to learn that. Why is that powerful? Because you don't want to be dependent on somebody for the rest of your life. How many people go to therapy for 15 fucking years?
Oh my goodness.
But
and then they claim that it works. If it worked, you wouldn't be doing it for 15 years.
That's right, you guys. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.